I'm Fred Tauber, the founder of Avaloch Farm Music Institute.
And my name is Scott Cornett. I'm Senior Project Manager with North Point Construction Management.
I bought the farm literally in 1995. We are sitting here on the porch of so-called West Wing. There are 4 buildings which are connected by a overhang. No one gets wet at Avaloch. The project is unique in the United States by offering professional musicians the opportunity to develop their repertoires, prepare for concerts, prepare for recordings. We have about 120 ensembles in the classical tradition coming each year. They range in size from duos to small Baroque orchestras. And so Avaloch Farm has become a center of new contemporary classical music creation. We have dormitories which accommodate 34 residents and a professional kitchen which feeds them 3 times a day.
We had the pleasure of meeting Fred initially back in 2011 to discuss his concept of a school for chamber musicians, or a retreat, more so than a school. And we worked through his director's stepdaughter, Rachel Stevens, who at the time was working for Mary Ann Thompson Architects down in Cambridge. And we worked together to develop the concept of sort of a 19th century farm.
So the process itself began with a planning board meeting here in Boscawen, New Hampshire, which drew the largest crowd the planning board had encountered in I don't know how long. And the neighbors were very, very nervous. And there was great concern, I would even say opposition. One of our neighbors said, there'll be people on the road whom I don't know. So this captures, I think, the essential character of this particular neighborhood. When I saw this concern, I hired a very good lawyer, and with the help of North Point and a certain eloquence on their part, we got the zoning. And the next year, 2014, I was named Outstanding Citizen of Boscawen, New Hampshire. My wife and I led the Home Day Parade in my 1947 Chevy and waved to everybody, and that represented, as it were, the acceptance of Avaloch Farm in this community.
When we then went on with phase 2, we did have a minor hearing that was required for a couple of variances we were looking for. And I looked up at the planning board, and interestingly enough, there is a beautiful oil painting of Avaloch Farm hanging behind the planning board benches.
You know, I had that painting commissioned, and they put it in the major auditorium where they have all the hearings. So every public hearing witnesses Avaloch in terms of its visual presence right there in Town Hall.
The farm, for zoning reasons, needed to be one building, contiguous building, and therefore, while we actually have 4 separate buildings as a master plan, they're all, as Fred had mentioned, connected by a covered walk. That is very much in keeping with the old farm designs, where they evolved as necessary to get from the farmhouse to the milking barn or to the woodshed without getting snowed or rained on. So it makes for a very warm communal feeling to make your way from one area of the facility to the other. It basically evolved as a barn, which is the largest structure built in the first phase of construction, which was 24 beds for residents. So that was the barn feature. The farmhouse itself was designed as a commercial kitchen and a dining hall. And that dining hall also serves as a performance space for smaller groups. And then from the farmhouse, we connect to what we fondly called the chicken coop. It's a 1-story building, and it was primarily for staff residents. And then ultimately we moved on to another agricultural building, which was the last phase of the project, which was completed in 2017, which afforded another 3 or 4 practice studios, as well as 12 more residence spaces. So some of the unique aspects of this project were items such as preparing a remote area for parking so as to not encumber the agricultural field with a large parking area. 33 parking spaces in a remote area of the property, but it is connected by a footpath, which is kind of a nice walk for residents. Basically, when they check in, they bring all their stuff in anyways, and they'll go park the car, and usually they might not even see that car again for 2 weeks. Another challenge was the ability to serve both domestic water requirements for 34 residents and of course the staff with the domestic water, as well as a fire protection system that requires a considerably higher volume of water. And we developed a community well system. We worked through Lewis Engineering and designed a water storage capacity of over 10,000 gallons. We created a space in the basement area of the farmhouse. We have a central boiler plant so that service is primarily in one location, again, down in the lower level of the center wing or the farmhouse portion. And we have underground piping for hot water and chilled water that meets the demand, both domestic and hydronic heating for the entire facility. As you can imagine, for a music institute, acoustical qualities are paramount. And so we had a number of challenges, whether it was to control sound between residence units where one person might want to be sleeping and another person might want to be practicing. And also another challenge was in creating a dining hall that had a acoustical quality to it that would be reflective yet resonant in its floor design. And then, of course, we had challenges regarding the remote practice cabins and some of the abutters' concerns with the possibility that this music might spill out of the cabins and be disruptive for one reason or another. So we worked through some of these challenges with an acoustical engineer, and we came up with a design that I'll always remember this term, that would control sound similar to that of the sound of rustling leaves, which sounds so soothing to me. Of all the acoustical applications, those 9 practice studios in the basement of the south wing were the most extensive, with acoustical panels on the walls and treatments in the ceilings and the walls and gasketed doors. So when you close the door, you're really hard pressed to hear much of anything from inside or out.
No, I think this field was a challenge. They basically had to rip off 3 or 4 feet of topsoil. Remember?
Yeah, and there's some good shots of that. You see there's pictures of the field before, and then then all of a sudden there's a shot where it's all cut back.
Stripped.
And this dump truck down in, it looks like a giant sand pit that, that ultimately evolved back into a field that looks like a farmhouse, and that sand pit was never there. So management of runoff from roofs, and that's why we did not do any hard paved surfaces. That, and in keeping with the 19th century farm, but it was a challenge to manage and meet the guidelines of EPA these days. North Penn Engineering, no relation to North Point Construction Management, but North Point Engineering was a huge asset to the development, and getting all the alteration of terrain and stormwater pollution prevention plan permits and all those early pre-construction tasks.
So working with the North Point team, which included Kurt Guthrow, who was on site and was extraordinarily vigilant and responsive, and Gary Thomas, who is of course the owner, and just an extraordinarily effective individual. It has been a pleasure working with them all, and with Scott herding all the various parts together effectively. It was a winning team, and they stayed within budget, they stayed within the timeline, and I think that they have been responsive to all of the owner changes, which were well placed, I might add. And so I've been very, very satisfied with the experience, to the point where I've asked North Point to do some personal work for me. And that, of course, is the best endorsement of all. I wear this North Point shirt in acknowledgement of the success of North Point's construction. And I think that in the end, not only did they meet their architectural aspirations of a design and build firm, but most importantly, they established trust in their judgment, in their efficiency, and in their professionalism most generally. And from that perspective, I don't think that I could give a more enthusiastic endorsement. And I don't know what the other competition will be for this award, Scott, but if you don't win, I'm going to be very surprised. All right? So that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Is that okay?